Hi, beautiful mama. Do you ever feel like you're not enough? Do you try to fill that empty feeling with food, alcohol, or social media? If you've ever tried to change your eating habits or do a social media detox without much success, you're going to want to check out this episode of the Soul Care Mom podcast. Today, I chat with Robin Clare about how to let go of what isn't serving you and what it means to truly love yourself and how you can move towards more self-love and live a joyous life. Just to be clear, we are not health professionals. This chat is solely based on research and personal experience. If you have any concerns, please seek out the help of your trusted health professionals. If you're ready to be free from suffering and live a joyous life, this episode is for you. Let's get started. Hi, beautiful mama. Welcome to the Soul Care Mom podcast. I'm Catherine Wild of soulcaremom.com. I'm a mama of 3 amazing kids, a soul care mom coach, and a yoga and meditation teacher. I have helped hundreds of women, and I'm here to help you feel calm and find your unshakable confidence as a mom. Think of this as a lunch date with a girlfriend. Grab a cup of tea and get cozy. It's time to get honest and vulnerable and shift the traditional mindset around motherhood. Be sure to subscribe to be the first to know when new episodes are released. Get ready to grow and feel empowered as a mom. I'm here for you, mama. Let's dive in. Oh, hi, Robin. Thanks so much for joining me.
Catherine, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yes, I'm so happy to talk with you today. And I want to dive into the wisdom of your book, Feast and Famine, Healing Addiction with Grace. But first, I'd love to hear more about you and your journey.
Sure. So I spent the 25 years in corporate America as a working mom. And when I think back on that time, I came into the workforce in the 80s, and it was just really, really an interesting time for women to come into the workforce. We really had to fight for everything that we got then. And so I spent that time, and I was a corporate warrior, but at the same time, I was also a spiritual warrior. On the weekends, I would do things. And one year, about 22 years into that time period, I stood on my deck every night for a year asking the divine, how could I be of greater service to mankind? And what I didn't know at the time is that I was committing to a life of divine service. And so finally I came out. I had a business plan, and I was an event producer within the spiritual realm. And then quite a few years in, I heard, what about you? You're the teacher. You're the author. You're the one that has a message. And so I decided to follow my heart and become a spiritual author and a teacher, spiritual teacher, coach, life coach, writing coach, all these wonderful things. But through the whole thing, I was actually in addiction. And I couldn't get out of it. It was 40 years long, my addiction. I had the trauma pattern started when I was 7 years old, when my mom put me on a diet at 7, and it just followed me through my life, and I became addicted. I was addicted to obsessive food compulsive disorder and bulimia. And the only way that I could really heal was to accept that what I was really addicted to was my own suffering, and that I was choosing food as a way to feel better about my suffering, and then choosing bulimia as a way to purge my pain. And it was through a tremendous amount of healing with my team, both on the earth and etheric, that I was able to really come into a place of recovery. And in fact, my recovery, my body started to shut down on me from the bulimia. I always say it, I felt like I was just about to pop a gasket. And so my grandmother came through in a reading and said, if you don't stop, Robin, you're going to die. And so I was basically scared straight from the bulimia. And I wrote, I, I was guided to write this book, Feast and Famine, Healing Addiction with Grace. And it's a spiritual path to healing addiction. And it's beautiful, and it tells my story. And it's my cousin told me it's like spirituality 101. She thought, I'm never going to be able to read this. Robin knows so much more than me. And, but that's how I wrote it. I didn't want, if people were not strongly on their spiritual path, I didn't want it to be a detriment to anyone that needed to hear this. And so I wrote it. And in fact, I was talking to a friend who read it, and she goes, now finally, because this is my third book, she said, finally, this is Robin Clare. She said the first two books were good spiritual books, but they weren't me. They weren't about, my journey. And I said, well, that's because I was in addiction when I wrote the first two. I almost felt fraudulent writing the first two books. And I did write Feast and Famine in addiction the first time. And my ending to the book was, well, I hope these teachings work for you. They didn't work for me. Have a nice life. And I was like, okay, that cannot be the ending of my book. So I put it down until I was clearly and securely in recovery, and which meant that I had to do a lot of healing work. I had to dig deep, find those trauma patterns inside of me and relieve my suffering, right? By addressing these patterns and looking at them and understanding the roles that the significant people in our lives have. For example, what I have learned in my spiritual path is that our soul is guiding us in this lifetime. That's why I like the name of your podcast. Mm-hmm. Our soul is leading the way. And so my soul was leading the way. And so there was nothing I could have done differently in my life, because I had to get to a point where I was ready to write the book. But I also came to understand that we actually choose our parents, and on the soul level, that they come and they play these roles in our life that bring us a lot of strife, perhaps, and joy too, until we're ready to heal the lessons that they brought to us on a soul level. And then once we understand that, we can come into acceptance of our relationship with our parents. And my mom came into this world to give a Tony Award performance in regards to my eating disorder. And finally, after I was in recovery, I had to tell her, I'm like, Mom, the play is closed. I'm like, we're not doing this anymore. I said, I understand. I'm not asking you to change. You're in your 80s then, right? I'm just telling you that we don't have to do this dance anymore. Mm-hmm. And so, I had to heal that. But she was great. Oh my God, she was such a good act. Her role, she played it wonderfully, and I'm not even angry with her or disappointed or anything, because that's what I chose. So I would say to your listeners, we have this soul journey, this soul's destiny that we're trying to accomplish. We do pick the players who are coming into our lives in this lifetime to help us to either stoke the fire or help us to put the fire out, whatever their role is, right? Yeah. And they're here. And it's the faster we can recognize who they are and what their role is, the less suffering that we'll do. So being able to address my suffering, my trauma patterns, I was able to really bring myself really squarely into recovery. And so I would say to your listeners too, it's not just a spiritual path, it's also a traditional path. If you're struggling with any form of substance or vice addiction, go for the traditional help. But I would also recommend reading Feast and Famine so that they can understand more about the suffering side, because the suffering is the true problem. Most of the other programs are only dealing with the symptoms. And so, yeah, so that's Feast and Famine. I'm really excited about it. I knew it would be not an easy book to write, and I had to dig deep and be willing to put myself out there. But I think I had tremendous healing in that book. And so what I do in my private practice, which I love, is to help other people who have a really amazing story like that to write it, like as a life coach and a writing coach, because I just feel that these crazy stories that we lived are not for our own entertainment, right? They are to help others to heal. And so that's how I work with my clients, is to help them put pen to paper or pen or hands to computer,
Yes.
to get their story out.
That's so beautiful. Yes. And I love, it's so beautiful to me that you took your journey and you lovingly poured it into the book to help others to heal through your story. And I'm really drawn to quotes, and I love that you included Marianne Williamson's quote
Yeah.
in your book. Do you mind if I read it here?
Oh, no, please do.
Such a powerful one. It says, "Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. We are born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone."
Yeah.
And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. And I feel like that is what your book is bringing to the world too. It's helping everyone to shine in their own right, in their own way, by seeing you shine. And I love that the purpose for your writing the book was to help people come back to the truth of who they are and learn to love themselves again.
Yes. Yes. And so if we look at Marianne's quote, what typically happens, and I can use myself as an example here, my trauma pattern was around humiliation. I have been humiliated 20 something times in my life, big humiliations, like totally embarrassing. And so part of why I did the bulimia was it was a form of self-humiliation. Because if I humiliated myself in the bathroom, because every time I would throw up, I would look in the mirror and roll my eyes. Like, what is the matter with you, you loser, type of thing, right? And so that was a form of self-humiliation. But it wasn't until that I could heal this pattern of humiliation that I could actually come on shows like this. Right. So my humiliation, or the idea that I would continue to be humiliated is what Gay Hendricks calls an upper limit belief. Right. So I had so I have my zone of brilliance, right, which is I'm a teacher, I'm a coach, wonderful author, right, mom, daughter. But there's this zone of brilliance that we really want to live in. And in between, while I'm remembering, the book is called The Big Leap, his book. But so in between that zone of brilliance and the zone of genius is an upper limit belief that stops you. Right. And it's in that upper limit belief is the trauma pattern. Right. And so once you can remove that, whatever that is in your life, I'm not good enough, whatever, whatever it is. If I do this, if I do this, I'm going to the poorhouse. If I do this, I will be abandoned. Right? Like people have a fear of abandonment, of being smothered, all these different things, that these patterns, these trauma patterns, right? And once you remove those, then you can safely go to your zone of brilliance and really be the light that Marianne is talking about. But we all have that. It's like, if you think of it like this, like you are walking down the road of your life, right? Really adding value as a mom, as a maybe working, as a daughter, as a wife, and you want to get somewhere further. You've got to look at what could potentially be blocking the way. So I always look at it as a path with a boulder in it, right? You could go over the boulder, you could go around it, but you're still got that boulder there, right? So I think the key is to look at it, do some wonderful healing work with either a therapist or maybe even an energy healer that does inner child work, and dissolve that boulder so that you can proudly just walk straight ahead. And so that's what I think she's saying there too. And I love in the context of the book that the people who are going to be most drawn to this book are people that are on the spiritual path and can recognize that they're trying so hard to have this wonderful spiritual journey, right? To live heaven on earth, all the things that we say, right? But when you're in addiction, when you're in addiction to suffering, it's really hard to reach the pinnacle of your spiritual success. And I'm hoping that this book allows people to see that there are some simple solutions to that. Simple in understanding, not simple.
Not always easy
to
to
do.
do.
Never. That's what I always say. Spirituality is so simple, and it's so hard at the same time, right?
Yes.
And so that's what I'm working on. And I want to share two more things. So we know you're suffering, right? One of the keys to getting out of suffering is to surrender. And that's a really big spiritual concept. And people, what the divine means by surrender is they need to know that you're really, really, very, very, very serious about getting out of addiction, right? About getting first your vice or your substance. I mean, and a vice could be watching Netflix for all day long. That's a vice, yes. Right? It doesn't have to be the ones where, alcohol or drugs or cigarettes. It could be how much are you on social media, right? But if you're really committed, really in surrender, then the grace will arrive that will bring you the resources. It's almost like simultaneous. If you're in surrender, the universe is like, yes, she's in surrender.
It's right? Like there's always opportunities for you to, yes, but you have to be open to it. Yes.
Well, you have to be in alignment with your own best good, right? Yes. Right? I mean, in the teachings of Abraham Hicks, which is, I love them, they always say that you are your only obstacle in your path to abundance. The universe has got it all lined up. And then you're like, oh, do I deserve this? I don't know. Right? Instead of like, I totally deserve this. And wonderful things are coming my way. In fact, I can already see them. I see me having these wonderful things. But instead now we're like, oh, I don't know. Do I deserve those? And the universe is like, oh, I really wanted to give her that. I guess we're just going to have to wait and see. Yes. So, and the same thing with grace. In order for grace to truly arrive, you've got to be really committed to surrendering what you're suffering about and surrendering the vice. And that comes through help, getting the help that you need, traditional help, and hopefully through really staying committed to your spiritual path.
Yes. So in the past, if I had heard like, I'm the obstacle standing in my own path, I would have been hard on myself and like, oh, I want to get out of my own way. But that's the opposite of self-love. And one of the passages in your book that really resonated with me was, if I can fill myself up with healthy food and loving thoughts about my life, then my light will shine out to all of those I meet. I heal others by sharing my light. And so I'd love
Yes.
to dive deeper into self-love and talk more about why self-love is so important in the healing process versus something more rigid.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
because um so we're born into self-love, right? I mean, who doesn't
Yes.
love babies? I mean, they're so innocent and beautiful and they're so loving, right? And then maybe we have parents or siblings or teachers or friends that are not nice to us in a variety of ways. We don't have to get into those. And we start moving towards self-loathing. And from self-loathing, we have struggles. And if we don't heal the struggles, and most people don't, I mean, most kids are not in therapy, most teens are not in therapy, that struggle turns to suffering. And the way out of suffering is, and then of course from suffering we go to addictive behaviors, right? So the way to self-love is through surrender, right? Because once you're in surrender and you're in recovery, then you're able to welcome in the grace. And when you start really welcoming in grace, it's not just how do I stay healthy? It's like all these miracles start happening in front of your eyes, right? You start seeing things. Like even last week, I was riding my bike and I had agreed to start my fourth book. All of a sudden, there's like all these animals kept crossing in front of my bike, a bunny, and then a squirrel, and then birds, and then a turtle. I'm like, keep moving, turtle. Like, like I'm like, and I know that was the divine saying to me, thank you. We appreciate what you're going to do. And here's some ways to say thank you to you. And so that's what I believe. I believe that when you return to self-love through a cooperative way of living, what I might call wholeness, which you'll read in the book, or, that when you're looking at your mind, body, spirit, and emotion, and honoring all four at the same time, which is a big commitment, right? We seem to slack off on one versus the other, but when you're in wholeness, congruence, then you're in self-love, right? And so it takes a while because there's nothing about your life that you're not being respectful of. And I believe that that's what self-love is when you can honor yourself. And that's why I'm saying that you have to honor mind, body, spirit, and emotion. And you don't have to be fanatic about it, but you just have to say, what am I doing? I actually, on my personal and my professional, I have one big giant to-do list, but on my personal to-do list, I have categories: mind, body, spirit, and emotion. And I have something going all the time. What am I doing? What am I listening to? How am I eating? Am I exercising every day? Right? Am I going to my own therapist to help deal with emotions that come up in day-to-day life? And so I really believe that that's the key to returning to self-love.
That's so beautiful. And I definitely agree with that. We're all born completely worthy and whole and
Mm-hmm.
enough and deserving of love. And we know that. And then along the path, as you said, we kind of lose our way. And it's our work to get back to that, I think, is in our physical form to find that self love again.
Yeah.
If you need some ideas for self care, be sure to get the 50 soul nourishing self care practices with activities you can do to nourish your soul and fill your cup as a mom. See the link in the show notes.
Yes,
Um,
and that is, I think, for me, the meaning of life is to recognize that we are the divine here on the earth, which would mean that we would be in total self-love because
yes,
there's nothing other than love in the divine realm, right?
yes,
And so there is no suffering there. So if you were really truly living heaven on earth, you wouldn't be suffering. Now, does that mean that there's no pain? Of course, pain is inevitable, you know, and And so in when you're trying to live heaven on earth, suffering no longer is an option. Before that, it was an option. But if you're trying to live heaven on earth in truly, how truly living according to your soul's desires, then there's no place for suffering. There will be pain and regret and different things. But what will happen is, the more you recognize that you, in your connection to your soul, right, in your connection to your divinity, it's almost like you become the observer of your life, right? People are still going to say the most jerky things to you, right? Or do things. We're going to hear things on the news that are just so incredibly incredible, right? I don't even have a word for what's going on in our country, right? But as the observer, you stay balanced and centered and grounded, just like you would as a good parent, right? Kids are going crazy all around you. It doesn't help to get into the fray with them. That does not calm them down for 1 second. That just makes them like, uh-oh, mom's losing it too, right? So the more you come down, I used to, when my kids were little, if they were freaking out, I would get down exactly eye level to them. And I would whisper, what's the matter? They're like, I can't hear you, mommy. I'm like, well, if you would stop yelling, you might be able to hear me. And then finally they're like, what? And they're like calm, right? And I'll be like, what's the matter? What can I do for you? Still whispering, right? And then they would tell me what the problem is, and then it would be dissolved. But if I would be like, what is the problem? Right? More screaming, right?
Yes.
So I think it's the same thing for our own spiritual path, that we have to be the one that is whispering, right? And looking at ourselves and saying, wow, that's kind of crazy. How am I going to react to that?
Yes.
Right?
You get to decide what vibration you want to be on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, there are moments, I'm not saying I'm perfect, believe me, ask my husband. But I try more often than not to look at what is going on around me and recognize that he is a mirror to me, right? Of whatever he's doing as my partner, there's something going on that I need to look at myself. And that could be a whole nother podcast. Mirrors, right? Right? Because people they mirror to us what we need to learn. Yes. Because if we didn't need to learn what they're putting out, they'd never show up in our field, right?
Yes, and I think kids are so good at that.
Oh yeah,
helping
my
you
goodness.
grow. And I'd love to know, so how did your journey affect your the way you mothered your children?
Well, I think it's interesting. I started my journey. My daughter was going into high school, and my son was in elementary school. And my favorite story is the weekend that I quit my corporate job, my daughter came in on Friday and said, what if I need 6 pairs of pants at once? And I said, well, if you need 6 pairs of pants at once, then I actually did something wrong raising you. And then on Monday morning, before she got on the bus, she said to me, so does this mean that every day after school, Mom, you're going to be home? I go, that's exactly what it means. And she goes, oh, that's awesome. And then she went off to school. And then my son was really raised on it, right? We've had so many conversations. And one day he was walking in front of me with a friend of his, and his friend said to him, hey, Garrett, I bet I know a word that you don't know. And he said, what is it? He goes, I bet you don't know what prana means. And Garrett, which means life force. And Garrett said, are you kidding? Do you not know who my mother is? Of course I know what that word is. And so I find with Garrett, oh my gosh, he's so wise. And Gabby too. I mean, they're both spiritual beings, and they've taken that energy and really brought it into being successful young adults in the workplace. And it's so wonderful to see that. And in their relationships, I think that if we can hold on to the spiritual concepts, and know that we are in a time of tremendous change, right? There's a spiritual evolution going on underneath all of this chaos, right? A
sure.
raising of the vibration of the planet, of what is acceptable and what is not. And if you think about it, even as you compare what's going on in the world to your own spiritual journey, you had to also make that decision, right? What was acceptable and what is not. And a wise manager I had in my corporate days always said to me, change in the middle feels like chaos. And so we're in complete chaos here, right? And so we just have to know that there's change that's coming, because I think, I think that people could have, people may have taken advantage of this time to be very productive, to renew their relationship with their kids, to really get to know them. And for me, it happened too, because my adult kids moved home. So I was like, well, this is really interesting, right? But I loved it. Oh my God, I loved it, because I never thought I would have that kind of time with them again, like I did. So for all you young moms out there, really look at the blessing of time with your kids, even though it seems completely overwhelming. And my hat goes off to all of you.
Yeah, there's amazing moms out there.
Yes. I really honor them, truly.
And I would love to talk a little bit more about food. So food was your addiction, right? And you mentioned in your book that food is everywhere and it's necessary to live. And so it's seen as more socially acceptable to overindulge in something like food.
Always overindulge, right?
Yes.
And so for me, it became a good and a bad association with food. So if I ate a healthy breakfast, like the more healthier I ate, the less chance I would have of obsessively eating or purging, right? Because there's no point to it, right? At that point, because I'm eating healthy. But as soon as I thought I was bad, like if I had a bad thing for lunch, whatever bad is, pizza or whatever it is to people, then it was like an excuse for me to eat the rest of the day. And then my mind would go crazy with, I just overate so crazy, I need to get rid of this or else I'm going to gain weight. And one of the talk on a man's podcast yesterday, I was saying, bulimia is not a way to lose weight. In fact, your body goes into starvation mode because it never knows what you're going to keep. And so it holds on to every calorie that it can. And in fact, most people who are bulimic are heavier than they should be because their body is saying, their body's saying, I don't know, is there more food coming?
Right.
Is she going to let go of that food? What are we doing? Maybe we'll just hold on to the calories. Maybe we need to store it as fat, just so we can survive. I'm talking as my body. So what I've noticed is that since I'm in recovery for 18 months, since this time last year, naturally, I just lost 10 pounds because my body is saying, oh, look, food, we get to keep all this good food, right? And healthy food. And I'm eating much healthier and not obsessively. So, for example, if I want one cookie, I have a cookie, not 10, because my mind's racing to that maybe I can purge, right? So it was really behavioral, right? It became like, am I good or am I bad? And I know a lot of women relate to that.
Yes.
Because there's so much stress from society to look a certain way.
Yes.
But I would really recommend that people just try to eat as healthy as they can. Think of their body, especially your soul moms, think of your body as the temple that your divine resides in, right? If we are each a divine spark of God, what is that divine thinking about your temple, right? And be that temple, be the representative of the divine, of God, of your soul, and your temple is part of that, right? Be as healthy as you can, not obsessively healthy, but as healthy as you can so that you can be of service wherever you are.
Yes. Oh, that was beautifully put. Yes. Yeah, your body is definitely a temple.
Yes.
And yeah. And just because that was something for me, when my daughter was born, we kind of I went on a like, what do I feed her, and a healthy journey. But then I became obsessive about it too, and finding the balance in it's okay to enjoy, things in life, and also
Mm-hmm.
treat yourself well, but actually be present when you're eating the cookie or the ice cream or something
Yes.
like that, and actually enjoy
Yes.
it.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
you can have that cookie,
Yes.
right? And really, I had a mindfulness eating coach, and I loved what she said to me. She said, when you're trying to decide which foods to eat, she said you should always just say, look at the food and say, will this food make me feel better when I'm done eating it, or will it make me feel worse? And we know that food is vibration, right? And so by eating something, will you feel better? Like after you're done, will you be like, oh my God, I can't believe I just ate that. It was so awesome. I feel wonderful. Or will you be like, I can't believe I just ate that. Like, what was wrong with me? Why did I need 3 servings of that, right? Ask because you're going to feel good or bad, right? There's those words again, good or bad. You're going to feel good about what you ate or not good about what you ate, right? So if you look at the food and just say, do I really want this? Is it going to make me feel better? And so sometimes I'll do that with the cookie, and I'm like, yeah, I really want that cookie. I'm
Yeah.
having it. And I'm declaring now that I'm not going to feel bad about it when I'm done, because I use my Fitness Pal to track my calories. And so I know how many I can have in a day, and that's just the one I'm choosing.
Yeah. And I
Right?
love that for the reason that it's asking you to pause before you reach for food, because for me, I do emotional eating. I find myself reaching for some chocolate or something, and
Mm-hmm.
and not mindfully doing it. And it usually has to do with there's an uncomfortable emotion that I don't want to deal with, or a stressful situation, and so I am, instead of lovingly looking at what's going on for me, I reach for food.
Yes.
And so I love that, because it helps you to pause before you and see
Mm-hmm.
if you actually want that thing for pleasure, or are you avoiding something, or is it nourishing you, or yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I would love to talk about, you mentioned social media earlier, and that's
Mm-hmm.
definitely something I work with my moms, because it's such a big part of our lives these days, and we connect with people, loved ones, family all over the world, and it's a beautiful way to connect, but it also can turn into a sort of an addiction. And so we talk about being present when you engage on social media, and being aware of your thoughts, and um, just being more purposeful when you do choose to be on social media. But it is such a big part of our lives. And do you have any tips for, just balance in social media?
It is, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that you really need to manage how you are on social media, because I believe that's just a new added level of stress in our
Yes.
lives if you don't stay balanced. And honestly, balance and being centered is the key to life, right?
Yeah.
And so see how you are on social media, and don't keep your phone by your bed.
Mm.
Put it across the on a dresser or something, because it's very easy to wake up at 3 in the morning, or you've just fed the baby or something, and then you're like, oh, I'll just check my messages. Why? Who are you writing back? Right. And then you start reading articles, and then all of a sudden it's an hour and a half, and you've missed an hour and a half of sleep. Right.
Right.
This is what I do sometimes. So I try to keep my phone as far away from me as possible, so I don't start reading in the middle of the night. And so I would just say it is addictive, and we have to look at that.
Mm.
Where are we not finding our own personal value, right? That we're looking for that value, that reinforced value from others,
Yes.
right?
Right.
Share because you want to, share because you're proud of things, right? And if you want to share what the sad things, know that that's the beauty of, I think, social media, is that if you need prayers, oh my God, it's so
Mm.
amazing, right? It's that
Yeah.
collective prayer process. People are just right there. So, but try not to go one extreme or the other. It just knocks you out of alignment.
Mm.
And then it's harder to be soul-based.
Oh, those are beautiful tips. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And so, one thing I work with my moms on is creating, and you talked about this already a little, but the creating like a, sorry, creating a self-care practice that does help you bring balance to all the areas of your life. I'd
Mm-hmm,
love to
mm-hmm.
know more about what you love to do for self-care.
Yes. So for exercise, I love to ride my bike or walk my dog. It seems like I do both every day. She's a 10-month-old puppy with a lot of
Oh,
energy.
oh, I'm sure.
Yeah. And then for eating, as I say, I do follow my Fitness Pal because I find it helps me to understand the macros of what I'm eating, how much protein, carbs, fats, salt, and then how many calories, right? And it helps me track my exercise and my water, but not in a fanatic kind of way, just like, oh, this is interesting, look what I have, and I put my meals in before I eat them, so I know what
Mm.
I'm doing. And then emotionally, I work with a therapist. I call her my therapist mentor, and she helped me to resolve my eating disorder orders with an S. and then and then and now we just continue to look at different parts of myself that maybe need some alignment, and healing. And then mentally, I'm always listening to some podcast or some course, because I feel it's just, I love it. I love it. I do it on my walk. So I'm like talking to myself. Oh my God, that's so true. That's so funny. Right. Like, and I'm like, well, whatever. This comes that crazy lady with her dog. Right. But I'm constantly learning. And I think
Yes.
that that's really important. Never give that up, you know, no matter what's going on. So for me, it's a half hour a day on my education.
Mm. No, that's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else that you want to share?
No, I guess if you're, oh yeah, I do. I have a 30-minute free consultation with me. If people go to my website, and we could talk about anything.
Yeah.
I just want to be of service, and we may talk about how I can help them going forward, but it's really not about that. It's about what's going on, and maybe I could add some quick advice
Mm.
for them. And so my website is clarity.com. It's a play on my name and the word. So it's CLARE-ITY.com. And in Instagram, I'm Clarity by Robin. And in Facebook, I'm Clarity with Robin.
Nice. Oh,
Mm.
thank you. And thank you so
Yeah.
much for taking the time to share all your wisdom
Yes.
and your journey today.
Catherine, thank you. It's been lovely. And I could just really feel your audience. I could feel like that it was nice to talk to all of these women, and really truly eating disorders there's so many millions of women just even in the United States that struggle with this, and hopefully if I've given them any advice that can help them, I feel totally blessed.
Thank you so
You're
much.
welcome. Take care.
Thanks for joining me, Mama. I'm over here giving you a big virtual hug. I love spending this time with you. You are amazing for showing up and carving out this space to nourish your soul. If you are loving the Soul Care Mom podcast, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. And if you're ready to start your mornings feeling calm and energized, get the Kickstart Your Calm Morning Guide, a self-care ritual for moms, as a free gift when you join the Soul Care Mom community. Head over to soulcaremom.com/Kickstart and enter your email address to get your free gift and start feeling like a calm mom today. Sending you so much love, Mama.